All right, let's talk about the Lamborghini's facelift. I went to Boise, Idaho, and then Rambo went to its plastic surgeon, mainly to address some issues with the audio system. The screen in the center, which is essentially the command center of the entire rig, not really, I mean there's a whole separate screen back there, but for the front, it is itty bitty and was just not working. When I was driving and trying to take phone calls about real estate or any, video production, anything else that I'm doing, it was almost impossible to keep my hands safely on the wheel and manipulate that teeny tiny screen, and the audio quality was terrible. I understand that in the 2023 Thor 18Ms that they have upgraded some of this, but it was really like sort of the basic what comes on a ProMaster van, and that just wasn't gonna fly because this is my mobile office. Like, it has to be, some of this has to be on point. So the first thing that got changed out was the actual center LCD screen command center, and a much bigger, you could watch a movie on this thing, but a much bigger console was added. And on this, I have some features that you really just, you have to have if you have a rig. Number one, tire pressure. Now, while not all tire pressure systems and gauges are terribly accurate, when you have tires that are carrying this much weight, you have to monitor them because you can have a blowout with an RV, and that is a very scary thing to go through. I've not personally been through it, but I know other people who have, and basically you just hear an explosion off the side of your rig, and then you can't drive it safely somewhere like the tire has burst. So you always want to monitor your tire pressure, particularly when there are changes in season. It gets very cold, it gets very hot, the pressure in the tire is going to change. And on a regular car, not that big of a deal, but on something that is this heavy, a huge deal, really big deal. So that controls the subwoofer.
Yeah, this is all your audio settings.
There's a much better radio system. There's CarPlay that was added. And then what I really enjoy, well, I can't show you because I'm recording with my cell phone, but the CarPlay is automatic. I don't have to plug it in. So it's wireless CarPlay, and that's really nice. But I just have a lot more information about both the rig and then the basic stuff that you do when you're driving a vehicle on a far easier to manage screen. So that was done. The second thing that was done is that a camera system was installed that syncs up with the backup camera, but also has sensors front and back, and then an interior camera and an exterior camera for insurance reasons. Now, I said to the guy when he was explaining this to me, I said, well, what if I cause the accident? He said, then you take that chip out and you put it in the microwave. And the last major change that was done while I was in Boise was that the doors, the passenger doors, were professionally dampened. I had tried that when I did the van conversion. It's a very sticky, like tacky material, and they line the inside of the doors or walls with it. I decided not to go further with it when I did my van conversion because I just didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, and it was very expensive. But I'll say that when you dampen your front doors, it does create a nicer experience when you're driving on the highway. You're going to have enough noise of stuff rattling around here, so if you can keep the peace up front, it's just a nicer experience. So that is what was done at the plastic surgeon. And to wrap up this video, we'll do a little bit of talking about the state of the book. For you new people, about a year and a half ago, I announced that I was going to take basically what built this channel, the story of buying the cargo van, converting the cargo van, and everything that happened down the road, and I was going to turn it into a book. And originally I got a lot of negative feedback that it had already been done, that Nomadland came out, and that this story had already been told. And I didn't agree with that because what I never talked about on this channel is the why. Why did I get the van? Why did I lose my job in news? Why, all the things that led up to getting the Babe Bus. And I thought that that was the most important part of the story because much of van life, hashtag van life, sells this very aspirational lifestyle where our lovely, organic, low carbon footprint couple just decides to have fun and goes off into the sunset, and they don't work. They just get like Instagram sponsorships. And that was not my story at all. So I thought that this would take 3 weeks to write. It actually took a year and was an ungodly amount of work. I watched all my videos again. I read through notes. I looked at pictures, and I put the whole story back together again. And then it was advised that, you should really seek out an agent early on. And I decided not to do that because I knew I wouldn't finish the book. If I didn't get the book accepted by an agent, I knew I would stop. And I just wanted this thing to be written. So I finished it, and then I sent out what's called a query letter. So anyone who's ever gone into the world of publishing, you have to submit a query letter, which is essentially the back of the book, and seduce an agent enough to look at the manuscript and then decide if they will represent it to one of the publishers. I sent out a bunch of query letters. I get like pretty much zero response. And that is the new modern smugness, is just say nothing, which I don't have much compassion for. Their reasoning for that is that they get so many book proposals. Well, I worked in TV news where everyone who saw Jesus's face in their toast or tea sent you a picture and an email wanting a story, and I still responded to all those people. So I didn't get anything, and I was told that it can take a while. You have to send out a bunch of query letters, and you may get a bunch of rejections, but don't give up. Well, at a certain point, it was looking a little bleak, so I sent my book off to a private editor for what's called a developmental edit. And basically, that is they look at the structure of the book. Does it flow? Does it make sense? Are there parts to be cut? And I'll tell you that there is an entire cottage industry that has sprung up around robbing people who are trying to publish a book or who are going to self-publish. Now, I didn't want to self-publish, at least I didn't up until recently, because you just get a whole lot more exposure if somebody is actually representing your book. So I paid about $3,000 for a developmental edit, which essentially was this woman took my book and she edited the first 5 chapters, and then there was really nothing on the rest of it. And when I called that out, she said, well, the idea is that I edit the beginning and then you learn how to edit and then you edit the rest. Well, the book is 106,000 words long, about 75 chapters. They're short chapters, but there's many of them. So I got robbed. I got robbed, and I had no idea that there were this many people out there that were making money off the self-published industry. But I felt like I needed a polished manuscript, and maybe that's why the agents weren't taking it. Interestingly enough, her feedback was that she felt like my work absolutely had commercial appeal, meaning that a publisher would take it and that I would be sort of like cutting myself short by going to self-publishing because she felt like I hadn't tried hard enough to get an agent. Well, I had a couple other discussions with people about the publishing world, and what I learned is that unless you're a name, they don't want you. And unless you have a huge social media following, they don't want you. Well, I have a large size, medium size YouTube channel, and I have all social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that. And still that's not enough. So I thought, well, if I had a huge social media channel, what do I need an agent for? I could just sell this myself. And then I also learned from people who were published that even if you do get picked up by a publisher, you still have to do all the marketing. See, I thought they would send me a flight schedule and a book tour schedule and, do all that, schedule the radio host interviews and the talk shows. And no, you do all that. So at the point that I've built the giant social media channel and I'm doing all the marketing, what am I paying you for? I couldn't really figure that out. Still, I wanted to try. So at that point, I decided to send it off to a couple more editors to get some feedback about, just the book in general, to see if there's anything to change for an agent. And at that point, the Universal, and this is a hard conversation to have right now, given what's just happened in Memphis, but we're used to having hard conversations on this channel. The almost universal feedback I got was that my book would be very hard to sell because it discusses my pro-law enforcement views. There is no way for me to tell this story without discussing that, because that was a big part of the reason why I lost my job. If I hadn't lost my job, I wouldn't have gotten the van. So I can't possibly separate that. Moreover, I don't know that I'm willing to. And that was the feedback I got, was that with that in there, that they don't want it. So I have to do all the work. I have to build the channel, and I have to go through basically a vanilla-ing of my story. The final nail in the coffin was when I learned what would happen if my book did get picked up by a big publisher, like they call them the top 5. And what I was told is that I will lose control of the story. It will be edited, re-edited, added, and subtracted however they feel is most marketable. I will have no say in the cover art. I will have no say where it's sold, and I will have no say in the title. So I will hand this over, and I will get back some kind of product that's easy to market. But it won't really be my story, which had me wondering, I wonder what the original stories were for so many of the books that we read. Like, what was actually in the author's mind before it went through a filter? It's really not going to work for me to lose control of my life, and that's what this is about. So at this point, I have decided to abandon the agent query process. It's not that I can't handle rejection. I'm just not willing to change my story to fit someone else's appetite. And maybe that means that I don't get a big book deal. It definitely means I won't get an advance. And it probably means that my book will never be in like a big bookstore. But that's okay, because the only people who I care about reading it are the people who matter to me and the people on this channel. So it is what it is. So right now the book and I are looking for what's called a line or copy editor to take out my numerous grammar, syntax, spelling, that sort of thing. And then at that point it will go off for self-publishing, and we will just sell it here, because hell, I was going to have to do all the work anyway. That said, I am going to reopen the Patreon channel or the Patreon page. Not because I need it to be a money-making venture, but because there won't be an agent or company now making any of these decisions. I have to make them all. And I don't want to do it all myself because I'm not the one buying it. I know the story. I lived it. So there's all kinds of decisions that have to be made about the cover art. And should the book have pictures in it, which is hugely expensive? Or should we put a QR code at the end of each chapter that goes to a website where people can see all the travel photography and like link to the videos? Or like, should they be two separate things? So all those decisions have to be made. And I would much rather have a group of invested people around me making, like a board, making that with me than just doing it on my own. Because I wrote it on my own, and I'll tell you, writing a book is a very lonely process. So I'm going to reopen that. I am not going to set tiers on it. I don't care. The lowest I can set is $1, and that is just fine. But I do need some kind of threshold there so that not just anyone who doesn't care about the book or this channel gets in there and like throws their weight around. So that is in the notes, and that's where the book stands. And come hell or high water, it will get published this year if I have to do it myself. Also tell you, people who want to get self-published, a lot of people just take their manuscript and like throw it into Amazon and do print on demand. You really want to have your book edited. And I got robbed, and I learned a very expensive lesson, but there's having eyeballs on that story. It's interesting the things that, even though she didn't do a great job, the things that she noticed, and then I was able to kind of tweak it so that it was easier to understand, or the references. So if you're going to go through all the editing stages and do this on your own, you're looking at like $10,000 to get a book through all the different editing layers, do the art, print it out. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. But I think it's worth it. If I didn't believe in the story, I wouldn't go through all that, and I certainly wouldn't spend that money. And we now have this vessel of creativity to put all those books in the back where all those Amazon boxes are, because I haven't unpacked anything, and take this show on the road. And I don't think I have said what the title is yet, and I'm not going to, but the people on the Patreon channel, they'll find out real quick. All right, weirdos, I gotta go sell a house. I gotta do it while my hair is still looking real pretty. Please sign up for that Patreon account and help me out. It's been a brutal process so far, and I definitely need a community around me to carry it across the finish line.